Hi, and welcome to the next part of the series of videos that cover the fifth client brief for 102CR. So this is the POV roller coaster task that you need to do as a group. And this video in particular looks at the environment artist role and kind of what are the things that you need to do, any issues with any of the work you've been passed that you need to address, and kind of some general techniques for developing, additional materials and models. So you should have been given your overall track by the 3D modeler. If you haven't, then you should have at least been given the track file by the animator, which should consist of basically just one spline or ring shape that mimics the track. Now it's really important to have that before you start so that you can tell the overall scale of the roller coaster, and you can start building in terrain and things like that. So I'm going to use this file here that I've been using for the demos. Your roller coaster may look very different to this, but that's completely fine. So the first thing that's missing is a reference point for the ground. So we just have this roller coaster floating in the middle of nowhere. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to this top view, and I'm going to come over to add standard geometry, and I'm going to go over to plane. Now plane is a 2D shape. But it's editable within 3 dimensions, which is why it exists in this area. Now, what I'm going to do is we're just going to use this as a reference for the ground. It doesn't have to actually be manipulated as terrain. So I'm just going to click and drag that out on the top viewport, and we can see that it's kind of intersecting our roller coaster a little bit. Also, it's kind of a silly color for ground. Let's just go ahead and make that green. Now, it's a bit high at the moment, so I'm just going to drag that down probably to about there. And that's kind of already looking better, actually. But we have a small issue here where we have some floating points. So we can do one of two things. We can either get the 3D modeler to extend these individually, but we don't know the process that they've gone through. It might be difficult, and if we do it ourselves, we might kind of mess something up. So what we're going to do is we're just going to cover those up. And the way we're going to do that is create some terrain. Now, terrain's actually really easy to generate in newer 3D modeling packages. And as well as do some for here, it might be worth considering creating some on the boundaries. So if we zoom in here, you can imagine it would be kind of annoying to have a view here on the roller coaster and then just be able to see this flat nothingness, kind of break the immersion. So maybe put some terrain up here to kind of break that apart. But first we're going to do this one. So I'm going to go back over to here, and I'm going to make another plane, and I'm going to, that's the right place, just going to put it about there. So I'm just aiming to kind of cover where these are, and I'm just going to drop that down just so that it's just above that. And I want to make sure that that it's a different color so that I can see it between these two. Now, when we did the big plane, we didn't put any sections in it. It's just got the one face, and that's because we're not really going to be manipulating it. We don't need that, we don't want to waste computational power and resources on there. But this one we do. So before I convert this to edit it, I'm going to go to modify, and I'm going to go to these sections, and I'm going to actually put this up kind of high, probably to about 75 each way. Now, the more sections you put in, the more detailed you'll be able to make your terrain. it doesn't necessarily mean that more detail is always good. You might be going with a low polyfill, you know, anything like that. But once you kind of got a reasonable feel for how many you need, you right click and just convert this to editable poly so that we can change it around a bit. Now, both Blender and 3ds have this really cool tool for doing this, which is like paint. It's called paint deforming. So we're going to use a paintbrush to deform the values of these vertices. So we have lots of different points in here. We can sort of see them there. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to be putting those up and down as we want. If you've played anything like Planet Coaster or anything like that, what we're about to do is going to be very similar to making the terrain in there, and it's the same method that is implemented in those engines. So with the object selected, if we come up to Paint Deform, and we want push and pull, so that means that wherever we and when we click on it we get this. Whenever we click on this, it's going to move on the Z axis, so that's up and down. And we can tell that it's Z because on the little widget it's got a vertical line in the circle, and that the radius of that circle is the size. We probably want it quite a bit bigger. Let's do maybe 50. Let's go 75 actually. And the strength, so strength is obviously how much that goes. So if we increase that to 5, we can see that now things are sort of moving. That's maybe a bit too much, so let's put that down to about 3. And what we can start doing is actually just pulling all of this up around here. And what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to make sure that I'm just going to put that up to one more, and I want that a bit bigger actually. So I'm going to try and create these nice, slightly kind of smoother areas first, and I'm going to cover where these posts are going, because we want them to make sense, right? We don't just want hovering structures. We want to make sure that it's you know, nice and safe for people to go on. So there's another one. There's another one, but we don't just, you know, want random bumps in the middle of nowhere. We want to try and feed this out a little bit, and got a little hole in here, and we can kind of, you know, go like this. We can really change that topology of the plane. Be very wary that if you go near the edge, the plane is still going to cut off, so try not to raise it by too much, otherwise it's going to start to lift like it is now. So but that's okay, that looks alright to me. What we can do is we can still move this, if we select the whole thing, we can still move this up and down, so we could actually get a more natural feel for it, maybe if it was something like that. I'd like to paint deform, get this bit hovering a little bit, there we go. And then if I shift, it will actually go down. So if I go kind of here and it goes a bit too high, maybe I just want to shift that. So that's kind of nice. I quite like that. That's a nice amount to be doing. So I'm actually going to change that over to brown, or like a brownie colour, so that kind of works like that. And that's really how you make terrain as part of your environment. It's not too difficult, and you can add lots. You can always add another one as well, maybe kind of do something like this. And you could always add a blue kind of color to it and make a little bit of water if you wanted. You could always add a material on that. What you could do, so that's actually looking quite nice already. And what you could do if you wanted to animate some waves in here is, rather than using the paint deform, what you can do is you can go over to the modifier list, and we'll actually add a modifier called noise. So noise isn't in terms of somebody talking or a crap piece of music or something like that. It's a generic term for random phenomena. So in a picture it might look like grains, so it's a kind of grainy image, and that's just some noise on the film. And on video it might just look like grey and white speckles. You've just kind of got that same kind of random values, and that's what we're going to try and put in here. So if I were to click on fractal and start playing with this, we could see that the topology of this plane is starting to change. So we don't want it to change a lot, but we definitely don't want it to drop below water. And if I were to go really kind of crazy, you know, we could see that that's really choppy water. It probably wouldn't be very choppy, but just for the effect we will do that, and we'll bring it up here. And so that looks pretty nice. That's kind of some water in there. We could leave that like that if we wanted to, or we could animate it, or we could send it over to our animator to animate. And it's really very, very easy. If you just come over to the modifier and open that up and select the gizmo, which is the tiny little controller that says where the middle of this modification is. And if we were to animate this moving, we would get, as you can see there, kind of the appearance of some waves. So we might want to do that as part of our environment as well. And now the last part for the environment artist is really lighting and kind of some background. The easiest way by far to adjust this is to go up to your rendering and go to the environment, and you'll get this menu here. And in here at the moment you can see we've got kind of this dark background, and our background color is black. So if we were to render something, let's just see, hopefully that's nice and quick, we can just see that that background is black. Now we can click on here and we can actually put a bitmap in here as an image. So we could use like a sky image maybe. Let's see if I've got one lying around somewhere. And if you're looking for something, that's from Unsplash, so there's probably a good chance that that is something I've downloaded already. Yep. So if you go to unsplash.com, they have loads of royalty-free images that you can use. Just make sure that you credit the author in your report. And we can see now that this is now using the map. We can sort of turn that on and off. And if we were to render, we've got some horrific tiling going on, but you can adjust that later on. That's not a problem. So that's kind of all of the main parts for the environment artist. Just kind of add these, and then obviously add some objects around, and then that's your role done. So good luck and have fun.